I wasn't always the man you see now. People often assume that courage is some sort of mystical armor you wear, that brave people simply don't feel fear. They imagine that heroes stand tall because they're immune to that tightening in the chest, the racing pulse, the cold sweat that beads along your brow when life slaps you hard across the face. But let me tell you something very few dare to admit. Fear is always there. And I learned this lesson the hard way. It was the fall of 2015. I still remember the way the rain slammed against my apartment window that night. The city lights reflected in the puddles like 1,000 tiny eyes, watching me, judging me. My heart pounded louder than the storm outside. My breath was shallow. My hands shook as I clutched the envelope that had arrived earlier that day. Inside, a single word that shattered my world. Termination. 12 years. 12 years of loyalty, late nights, and endless sacrifices for a company that now simply decided I was no longer necessary. I sat there, paralyzed, staring into the mirror across from my couch. And that reflection, oh God, it wasn't me anymore. My skin was pale, my eyes hollow. Fear was no longer some distant possibility. It sat beside me. It wrapped itself around me like a cold, suffocating fog. And then the darker questions came. What would I tell my wife? My kids? How would I pay the mortgage? Would I lose the house? Would I lose myself? You see, fear doesn't whisper. No, it screams, it torments, it feeds on uncertainty. But in that very moment, as I sat drowning in that black ocean of anxiety, something unexpected happened. A faint vibration buzzed on my coffee table. My phone. A message from my old college friend, David. We hadn't spoken in years. Heard about what happened. Call me if you need to talk. It was simple, but to me it was a lifeline. I hesitated. My pride screamed at me not to show weakness, to pretend like I had it all under control. But my soul, oh, my fragile, breaking soul, it knew better. And that, my friends, was my first act of courage. Not the absence of fear, the decision to move despite it. I picked up the phone. Before I continue, if you've ever felt like this, lost, consumed by fear, unsure if you have the strength to go on, I invite you to subscribe to this channel, because what you're about to hear might just be the very thing your soul needs. And trust me, you're not alone. David answered on the first ring. And with that call, a new chapter of my life began. A chapter where I would finally understand what courage truly means. David's voice was calm, steady, like a lighthouse cutting through my storm. Listen, man, he said. I know it feels like the world's crashing down, but you need to hear this. Your life isn't over, it's shifting, and sometimes that shift is what brings you to who you were supposed to be. His words didn't magically erase my fear. No, but they planted a seed I didn't know would soon grow into something life-changing. David invited me to meet him the next morning. He told me to wear something casual. I had no clue what he had in mind. My mind spun with doubts, but something inside whispered, go. And that's what I did. The next morning, under a sky still weeping from last night's rain, I stepped out of my apartment. My legs felt heavy, like dragging chains behind me. Every step felt like a battle against an invisible force screaming, stay home, hide, it's safer here. But I walked anyway. When I arrived, I found myself standing in front of an old, weathered building with a faded sign, Shelter of Hope. David greeted me at the door with a wide smile. Inside, the scene hit me like a hammer. Rows of people, homeless, broken, forgotten by the world, sat quietly as volunteers handed out food, clothes, and warm drinks. I froze. Why am I here, David? I asked, my voice barely escaping my throat. David looked me dead in the eye. Because this is where real courage lives. He handed me a ladle. Today, you're not going to focus on yourself. You're going to serve. My hands trembled. My instincts screamed. This isn't me. I don't belong here. I was terrified, not of these people, but of the mirror they held up. They had lost more than I ever had. Yet many smiled. Some even laughed. Despite their pain, they were alive, fighting. As I served bowl after bowl of soup, something profound began to happen inside me. Each person I met carried a story, stories far darker, far heavier than my own. A man named Thomas had lost his wife and 2 children in a car crash. Yet he smiled as he said, every sunrise is still a gift. An elderly woman, Martha, once a teacher, now blind and alone, whispered as I served her, young man, you have kind hands. Keep using them. And in that room full of suffering, I discovered something shocking. Fear thrives in isolation, but it shrinks when you're busy lifting others. The hours passed like minutes. My anxiety, my self-pity, they melted away under the weight of gratitude I didn't even know I was capable of feeling. At one point, I stepped outside to catch my breath. The sky had cleared. The sun beamed down through soft white clouds, bathing my face in warmth. And for the first time in weeks, my chest loosened. My breath was steady, not because fear was gone, but because I had decided to stop letting it control me. You see, that's the great lie we often believe, that courage is waiting for the fear to disappear. But true courage is walking forward, fully aware that fear is still there, but choosing not to bow to it. My friends, if this is resonating with you, if you've ever stood paralyzed before your own fears, losing your job, your relationship, your purpose, I urge you, hit that subscribe button. Stay with me, because this journey isn't over. You'll want to hear what happened next, because what came after that day, it changed everything. The following weeks turned into months. I kept returning to the Shelter of Hope, not out of obligation, but because each visit chipped away at the fortress of fear that had once ruled my life. Every time I served a meal, every time I listened to someone's story, every time I offered a smile to someone who had every reason to hate the world, something inside me healed. But then, one morning, life tested me again. I received a phone call, an offer, a new job. It was from a prestigious firm, bigger than the one that had let me go. Higher pay, greater status, a dream position. The catch? The role required relocating across the country, leaving behind my wife's sick mother, pulling my kids out of school, abandoning the Shelter of Hope, the very place that had saved my soul. And in that moment, fear came roaring back. What if you never get another opportunity like this? What if you're making a huge mistake? What if you fail again? The anxiety was suffocating. My hands trembled just like the night I lost my job. The old voices returned, louder, crueler. But this time, I did something different. I didn't run from the fear. I sat with it. I closed my eyes. I remembered Thomas, who smiled through unimaginable grief. I remembered Martha, who spoke of kindness even in her blindness. I remembered the hundreds of faces I had served, each one teaching me that life is not about escaping fear, but facing it head on with purpose. And then I heard David's words again. This is where real courage lives. It struck me like lightning. Courage isn't about making the safest choice. Courage is about making the right choice, even when it terrifies you. That night, I sat with my wife and kids. We talked for hours. We prayed. We cried. And together, we made a decision. I turned the offer down. Instead, I took a modest consulting job right here, one that allowed me to stay close to my family, to continue serving at the shelter, and to build something far more valuable than any corporate title. A life of purpose, a life of service, a life of courage. Today, I no longer fear losing everything, because I've already been to that dark place, and I've seen what lives on the other side of fear. I've learned, and listen closely, my friend. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the triumph over it. And if you're standing in your own storm right now, paralyzed, doubting, drowning, hear me. Your fear doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. But you have a choice. You can stand. You can move. You can triumph. If this story has touched you, if it's stirred something inside you, I invite you now. Subscribe to this channel. Share this message with someone lost in their own storm. And join me as together we walk into the fire, not fearless, but triumphant. Because that, my friend, is where true life begins.